Hey, a quick heads up before we start. The next cohort for the Strategic Leadership Accelerator is open right now, and spots are filling up. If you're ready to stop being stuck in the weeds and start leading at a higher level, stick around after the episode. You already know what you should be working on. You know you're spending way too much time doing. Deep down, you probably even know that you're addicted to this doing. That's not where we need you. We need you to step up into strategic leadership. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is breaking this tactical cycle. This is a live masterclass recording we did to over 100 leaders from around the world to teach them exactly why people get stuck in this loop. And you're going to learn exactly what it takes to break out of it.
Welcome to Leadership Mindset 2.0. Practical neuroscience and psychology to transform you from a tactical doer into a strategic leader. Here is your host, former social entrepreneur of the year and coach to some of the world's top executives, R. Michael Anderson.
Hello, everybody. Michael here, and welcome to Breaking the Tactical Cycle, 5 steps to think, speak, and lead strategically. Now, you may be listening to this on the podcast, or you may be live watching this masterclass, or you may be watching the recording. Doesn't matter. We have some really, really good things for you. And this is one of my most favorite classes, masterclasses to teach because, well, let me go to the next slide. And this is the question that I want to ask you because this comes up a lot. What does it actually mean to be strategic? And the reason I bring that question up is because I had somebody in one of my programs, and he said, Scott said, I find the word strategic to be too ambiguous and too generic. I don't know what to do, or their behaviors and actions that bring it about. And that's what we're going to talk about, because this is not about creating a strategy for your company or for your team. Normally, you know what the strategy is, or normally you have somebody like me sit down with you for 2 or 3 days at the beginning of the year and develop a strategy, or the head office gives you the strategy, or the strategy is pretty obvious. It's about showing up strategically. How can you be a strategic player? How can you stop being this tactical person that does everything and becomes that higher level leader that people look up to, that's influential, that strategically drives the company? I always put this slide in. Most people hopefully know me. This is about me before. Hopefully you have Leadership Mindset 2.0 by now. Most people probably have invested in the book. If you don't know me, I'm just going to spend 30 seconds on this. I've been a CFO. I've founded, scaled, and sold 3 of my own companies. During the process, when I started my first company, I realized I was a horrible leader. And there's a very dramatic story about really screwing things up as a leader. It would send me into depressions. I was failing my team and my company. I had a business partner assault me. It's a very dramatic story. We don't have time for that now, so you got to wait for the Netflix special. No, don't got that yet. But you can go on YouTube. I talk about it all on YouTube if you want. If you want the in-depth version, or I think I talk about it in the book. Anyway, I realized I had to sort myself out. So in that process, I went and got a master's in psychology and trained in neuroscience. And now what I do is I teach Leadership Mindset 2.0 has sold. It's coming up on 100,000 copies. Won 3 Book of the Year awards. Uber, Salesforce bring me in to work with their leaders. And again, what I do is I work on the psychology and neuroscience of leadership. I just want to prepare you for getting the most out of this. And again, whether you're watching this live on the recording or on the podcast, I want you to focus on this. I know sometimes when people are on a virtual course or virtual masterclass, they can be like doing emails, checking their phone, checking social media here or there. Seriously, go on do not disturb mode and concentrate. I have a lot of content in here and it goes quickly. Look, I'm a business owner. I like to go quickly. I'm not going to talk about like one concept for 45 minutes. We're going to go bang, bang, bang. And this is in a way a test for you being strategic, because you as a strategic leader, you need to know what to commit to and to really focus when you need to focus. So I've really worked hard to give you a great 45 minutes to an hour. So just the same, I really encourage you, if this is a change you want to make, that you focus as well. A lot of leaders, not all, maybe this is you or maybe this isn't, they know what they should be doing, strategically. They know they should be working on these higher value, higher level projects, but they never actually get to it because they got all this other things to do. Some people say, I made it to, when I say the table, they made it to the senior leadership team. They made it to the board. They spent all these years working really, really hard, promoting themselves, networking, whatever it had to be. Then they make it to the room they've always wanted to be in. And they thought that it would fall into place. But now that they made it with all these other high-level leaders, they don't fit in. It's not that they were doing a bad job, but they're not looked at as a strategic player. This is an interesting one. My boss, my team, my coach told me I needed to be more strategic. A lot of people get this from their team. Their team says to the team leader, hey, you need to be more strategic. Bosses will tell this a lot. I work with a lot of leaders that don't get promoted because they're doing a really good job, but their leader's like, look, you don't get it at this higher level yet. It's hard for me to view thinking as doing. So we're going to talk about how, as a strategic leader, you need to take a step back. But people are so hardwired into working their butt off, they keep filling their day with things that they can cross off, and they just keep themselves busy. Sometimes I wonder if I got promoted into the wrong role, and I'm terrified other people are starting to wonder the same thing. So that's it. This is what I hear over and over and over again, and this is really what's driving this whole thing. This is the really interesting question I have for you. Do you secretly wonder if you're even meant to be a strategic leader, or whether that's just not who you are, or you're not wired for it? It's a really deep, honest question. I just talked to a very, very accomplished person a couple days ago, and he's like, maybe I'm just not cut out for it. It's a very, very interesting question. And I can tell you that everybody can be strategic. It is a learned skill, but sometimes our mind plays with us. And there is a cost of staying stuck, because if you don't get the right support, if you don't make the right changes, if you don't shift your mindset, then here's the cost. You become the person who gets all the work done, but none of the promotions. There's a lot of people working their butt off, and they get passed over for promotions because it's like they're doing too much of a good job, but they're not playing that bigger game. Or they hit a ceiling because they're supposed to be driving tomorrow's growth, but they're busy fighting fires. And every day you stay tactical is a day your team doesn't get the leader they need to grow. Because a lot of people that aren't strategic aren't growing their team for a couple different reasons we'll talk about. And look, your best people could start looking elsewhere because they're not being developed, they're being managed. 5 years or less, you're going to have a burnout, plateau. You're going to be watching people you train get promoted past you. And I know I'm talking a lot about promotion, but this happens just as much with business owners. I did a presentation, this business owner named Tim. I saw one of these presentations. It was a keynote speech, I believe it was. And he came up after me. He's like, oh my gosh, we had a great first 5 years. And the company kept scaling and scaling. And it hit a plateau for the last 2 years. We didn't grow. We got good people. We got a good product. And he goes, in this, I realized it was me. I've been trying to be the main salesperson. I come from a sales background. I'm great at sales, but they don't need me to sell anymore. They need me to lead. But then he goes, I don't even really understand what that means. I know I have to do it, but what does that mean? And that's when we worked on what is his new role. We'll talk some more about that as well. Here's the tactical cycle. Here's what happens time after time. What happens is you're really busy, but you clear some space. Maybe you delegate something, maybe get something taken off your calendar. Whatever you do, you clear some space. Then that might go good for a day, a week, whatever it is, but something urgent happens. Then you're like, oh my gosh, I got to fly in and do it. I got to save the day. And then overwhelm sets back in, and you're so tired, it's like, oh, I'll try again next week. Next week happens, you do the same thing. Something urgent happens, fly in and do it, overwhelm, and it goes over and over. It's a cycle. That's why it's a cycle. And you never get out of it. This is really the burnout cycle. There's a couple reasons for burnout, but not adapting to your role as a strategic leader is a huge one because you have so much pressure on you that you revert to your old habits. and you have more responsibility and you're not stepping up. So let's talk about your strategic wiring. Here is a graph. Here is a normal person, right? And if you're higher on the graph, you're being more strategic. And if you're lower, you're being more tactical. Look, by definition, for the first 20, 30 years, we're tactical, right? When you're in, school, all these other things, you are just a tactical being. You're just doing this. You're going to school, whatever. You get your first job. Of course, you're tactical. And then what happens is, as you start getting promoted, and so you need to be a little less tactical, a little more strategic. And then what happens is you keep getting promoted and the company needs you to do this, or your role needs you to do this. It needs you to get strategic right away, but you don't. You keep moving a little bit strategic all the time, a little bit more strategic, very incrementally. But then there's this gap, and this gap causes stress. This gap causes all these different things. And what we need to do is we need to accelerate this, because you've been really good, because you've been spending your whole life working out your left bicep. Russell and I were talking about this just a couple hours ago. It's like if you work out one bicep, this is your tactical bicep, and this is your strategic bicep. If you work for 25 years on working out this muscle, it's going to be really big. The problem is we need to get this. I'm sorry for this horrible picture. I was just having a little bit of fun today. But it's true. If you work out one muscle, it gets really, really good. And you probably don't ever need to work out this muscle again. You're probably awesome at being tactical. That's why we need to focus on this so that you can be the amazing leader that's in your future. I call this the great rewire. This is not a productivity system. It's not a different way to organize your calendar. It's a fundamental shift on how your brain responds to leadership situations at the identity level and behavioral level. Because there's a lot of changes we need to shift out of from tactical to strategic. It is a broad term, but it covers a lot. And what it is, and I've been using this metaphor more and more, it's like you're on a trapeze and you're on the one trapeze, you're on the one bar. I don't even know what trapeze things are called, bar or whatever, and you're swinging. And you're like, this swinging is not going to get me where I want to go. And a lot of people try to move incrementally. Oh, I'm going to try read one more blog or read this book or this. And they may move a tiny, tiny bit. But that's going to move you very, very slowly. What we need you to do is take the jump from one bar to another. And when you're on a trapeze bar and you see one and the other swinging, you have to let go and commit and trust in your ability to grab the next bar. And when you do that, there's like this 1 or 2 seconds where you're in a way like not supported. You're going through momentum, and it is really, really scary. Because mentally, you're going to catch the bar, but you are like suspended in the air. And so this is what really you need to do. You need to commit, you need to jump, and then you need to make that kind of shift, tactical to strategic. Now, before we talk about the great rewire process, the 5 steps of that, we're going to talk about why what you have tried has not worked. So we're going to talk about some myths. I always like busting myths here. Some people say, oh, I just need to get better at time management. Oh, if I just had the time, then I'd be strategic. And this is the most logical thing to try. And the thing is, time management tools are built for doers. I mean, you might have heard about Covey's quadrants, calendar blocking, inbox zero. What did David Allen write? Getting things done, etc. And look, they're not bad. They're just meant for doers, meant to organize their calendar. They do not help you do less. They just help you do more better. Thinking is the work. Reflecting is the work. Delegating, coaching is the work. And your highest value contribution is your judgment. The more strategic you get, the more we're looking for your thinking, your coaching, your wisdom, your vision. And you don't get that by working more. The next myth people get caught in is, I just need to delegate better. If I was better at delegation, then everything would be fine. But look, you tried delegation, probably it didn't work, or you would do it more. And the thing is, delegation is a mindset shift and a system. And I came up with this quote Look, I'm going to be really honest with you. I was using AI as a thinking partner, and I was going to say, I'm just going to take credit for this, but AI came up with this great quote. This is me being totally honest with you, but I love it. Delegation without a system is not delegation. It is abandonment with optimism. There's a lot of people that flat out don't know how to delegate, and it's both a system and a mindset for you and who you're delegating to. And we make up all these stories. I could do an hour on all the BS myths that our mind goes through for delegation. Myth 3, I'm just not wired this way. Nobody says this out loud, but a lot of leaders believe it quietly. And just think about it. You were not born a doer. You learn to be a doer by 20, 30 years of doing. So we can teach you to be strategic. And if you learn how to be a doer, you can learn how to be strategic. Nobody's just sat down and talked to you. So that's really what this is about. I've really worked hard to proceduralize and put this in a system. Myth 4, the new role promotion will force the shift. Peter, a VP in one of my courses, said he was promoted to senior leadership, but he's like, I'm still doing much of my old job. And I get that. When you go into a new job, you have to have the right mindset and the right identity to be that strategic leader. Otherwise, you get sucked into just going back to your old habits. And the thing is, unless you make these changes before you get the role, then you are going to struggle in the role, and then people are going to see you as a tactical player, not a strategic player. More training or an MBA will teach this. Look, I have an MBA. I have an international MBA from Kutztown University in Pennsylvania. They teach strategy as a concept. And an MBA is not bad, but it's not going to show you what you need to do. It's going to teach you how to have a strategy for a big company or a marketing plan or whatever. It's not going to change your behavior. And I was talking to a leader 3 days ago, and he's like, my instinct is when I need to feel confident is to go back to the books. What do I need to read to sound like I know what I'm talking about? He's a super smart guy, but every time he had a big meeting, every time he needed to do that, he went back and studied more. We don't need you to study more. That's what we need to shift. We don't need you to be smarter at your technical thing. And the gap is not in knowledge, it's behavior, identity, and habit. And these things require fundamental different types of work. Okay, so let's talk about the Great Rewire, 5 steps that actually do work. First thing you have to do is create space to lead. Now, what I mean to do this, and I hate to tell you this, you are addicted to doing. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. You're addicted to doing. We all know what dopamine is. It's this really cool drug we get in anytime we do something like scroll Facebook, when you get an attaboy, etc. So the thing is, what doing does, when you have something on your task list and you check it off, you get an, hey, good job, Mike. Good job, Mary. Good job, whoever. And that's a dopamine addiction. When you move into strategic leadership, that doesn't happen like that because you don't have this feedback loop. Sometimes you don't have any feedback loop at all, or it's going to be weeks, months, or years. That Tim, who I told you was a great salesperson, when he was a salesperson, he'd go out and have a good meeting a couple times a day. That would be like, oh, good job, Tim. Good job, Tim. Whether it's somebody else saying it to him, the prospect, or him saying it to himself, he'd find all these incremental things that worked really well, and then the sale would close. But when you're like a sales manager, a sales leader, a business owner, you're working on these long-term type of things. So you don't get that dopamine hit. So we're addicted to that dopamine hit. So we go back to doing because we missed that hit. Let me ask you this. If a full day opened in your calendar next week, what would you feel? I bet if a day opened in your calendar next week, you would rush to fill it. Aaron from the last cohort said, I still feel guilty. I should be doing more tactical work. When I'm not, I feel guilty. And we're going to talk more about that in a second. And that guilt's not a character flaw. It's the wiring, and it can change. And I'm going to give you one thing to do. I want to give you some takeaways. So I'm going to give you one thing to do for each of these steps. And look, these steps are in depth, but I also want to give you takeaways. Here's the simplest thing you can do to create more space to lead. Do a power hour. What you want to do is just block the first hour of your day, whatever day you can do it, but I like the middle of the week. And then what you want to do is you can you start with a 15-minute to 20-minute walk. I really like doing walks outside. I know it might be raining, might be snowing. I don't know. Obviously, if you can't do that, do something else. Just sit with a notebook or something and just give yourself time to think. And so you can either say, hey, I just want to think about my job in general, my career in general, my business in general. Or you can say, hey, I got this really difficult client, or I got this problem staffing, or I got this whatever. And just let your mind play with it. Because the thing is, when I talk to leaders and they're like, I'm not strategic, and I look at their calendar and it's meeting after meeting after meeting, and then they catch up with email at the end of the day, like, well, no wonder you're not strategic. You're not giving yourself any time to think. So this gives yourself just time to do creative thinking. And then what you do is after you will get good ideas and insights, then go open your laptop. Don't look at your phone. Don't do anything else, and just work on something strategic for 40, 45 minutes. And you'll probably get some good insight with the 15, 20 minutes you took before that. And that really sets your brain up to do that. And if you do that every week for 6 or 8 weeks, you'll start feeling way more strategic. You'll start having a more strategic bent towards everything. And look, if you can't think of anything specific, just read industry blogs, strategic blogs, look up competitors, see what the new trends are, read something about AI. That is what gets your strategic brain thinking. Very simple power hour, super, super easy. All right, now we got break the doer habit. So what I mean by this is remember I talked about the cycle. When something urgent happens, you fly in and save everything. We got to get you out of this Superman or Superwoman role. And I teased this before. I'm going to talk about a hidden barrier in being strategic. It's guilt. The single biggest invisible barrier to strategic leadership, and it shows up in 3 specific ways. 1, guilt while delegating. My team is already busy. I don't want to add to their load. Oh, everybody's busy. I might as well just do that. Another one is guilt when calendar space has opened up. This is the one I just talked about. You rush to fill it as soon as it opens. And the third is stepping back from doing. This is how I prove my value. So what this means is a lot of us prove our worth by how much we do. Prove our value. There's a worthiness thing in how much we do. You'll know this because people brag about how many hours they work. In a way, it's more impressive to say, hey, I worked 60 hours, rather than say, hey, I made $50,000 last week. For some people, people want to brag more about the 60 hours than the $60,000 they made. Here's a truth, and this may trigger you a little bit, but I'm here to trigger you a little bit. Your time, if you're the boss, your time and energy are more valuable than anyone else's on your team. That's the truth. Not because you are more important as a person, because you have the biggest impact. Does this concept make you uncomfortable? Good, then you know what to work on. Good. Because by definition, you should be up there doing the strategic things, and you can't be strategic when you're doing all this stuff. I'm going to give you a great story about this. I was working a bit with a business owner, a managing director, and a leadership team. And there was a managing director named Ian, and they just had a couple people that they were a really rapidly growing company. They started out very, very small, startup, and then they were bringing all these great people, amazing business model. And Ian, the managing director, was working way too much, way too tactical. And the business owner was like, "Look, we need him to be more strategic." And they had 3 people they were putting in middle management, and these 3 people they put in the middle management were really eager and excited, and they were promised they were going to get higher value, higher level things to do to free up Ian so he could be the managing director. Well, these people, they were consultants, and everybody was really busy. Everybody was really busy. And a large client called, and they needed somebody to go out there for the day. And Ian, instead of tapping any of those 3 on the shoulder, he went out and spent the day. He's like, oh, I got to protect my team. He went out and spent that day with the team. You know what happened when he got back and the team found out? Every one of his team members were angry. They're like, hey, I thought we were going to be able to do these higher level meetings with clients. Ian's like, oh, I saw your calendar. You were busy. You know what they said? They said, you know what? You were busy too, but I would have moved stuff around because this would have been a great opportunity for me. So how often are we protecting our team with things that we shouldn't be protecting them from because we feel guilty? All right, that's the foundation. Now you understand why you're stuck, why the fixes you've already tried have not worked, and why this has never been about willpower or working harder. Part 2 is when we're getting into the actual rewire. We're going to work on the identity shift that makes all the external changes stick. We're going to look at the difference between leading through influence versus leading through control, and why it matters more than most leaders realize. We're also going to talk about what it actually looks like to show up as a strategic player in the rooms that really count. That's next. I'll see you there. Before you head out, if you've been thinking for a while now that you need to operate more strategically, but you haven't figured out how to actually make that leap, that's exactly what we work on in the Strategic Leadership Accelerator. Over 6 live sessions and a focused cohort, you'll run through the specific steps to shift you from doing everything yourself to leading and influencing with the kind of leverage that gets you to the next level. Whether that's a promotion, invitation to the board, or strategically scaling your business. Go to rmichaelanderson.com/strategic for a whole lot more on it. The link is in the show notes as well.